Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, social marketers from around the world. My name is Patrick Cook, and as president of the International Social Marketing Association, it's both my privilege and pleasure to introduce the 37th in a series of webinars designed to advance social marketing teaching, research, and practice. So I'm here today with Christine Jennings, Catherine Sadler, Dave Cutter, and our speaker, Dr. Abi Badejo. Christine and Catherine have worked to arrange today's webinar and will manage any questions that you may have for Abi. Dave is also going to be working in the background, just making sure everything runs smoothly, particularly our technology. Before we begin, I just wanted to draw your attention to a few things, as we always do at the beginning of these webinars. Just to remind folks that the new issue of Social Marketing Quarterly is out, and that this is now a free benefit for all members of ISMA and our affiliated association, so please take advantage of that benefit. There's some great articles in this quarter's issue. We're also going to be having some other member benefits coming up, in addition to a new website and a new database to help streamline the joining process. We're looking at doing some online training or online learning as well. And you saw at the beginning of the webinar that there are a number of different events happening, but just wanted to put in a bit of a plug for the Social and Behavior Change Conference, Social and Behavior Change Communication Summit coming up in Marrakesh, and that's coming up this spring. A number of our members are going to be there and hopefully be doing some presentations. So I'm going to turn it over to Christine, and she's going to get us started. Christine?
Thanks, Patrick, and welcome to Social Marketing Association members and guests joining today's free webinar. For those of you who are not yet members, we encourage you to join. We'll have more information about the membership at the end of the webinar. And as Patrick said, this is just one of a series of webinars available to our members. I'd like to remind you that if there is more than one of you at your location, we'd appreciate it if you'd let us know how many you are using the chat box. And also feel free to use the chat box to ask any questions that come to you as you're listening to today's presentation. You don't need to wait until the end of the talk. Go ahead and add your questions in the Q&A box there. So next, I'd like to turn the webinar over to our moderator for today, Catherine. Catherine?
Sorry there, I was on mute, talking away. Can you hear me now? Dr. Abi Foluké Badejo is a behavior change researcher, innovation designer, and social entrepreneur driven by social justice and a love of complex problem solving for transformative social impact. Her emancipatory interests are evident in her systems-based approaches to understanding complex behavioral and social problems. Her work focuses on generating and translating multi-stream formative research insights into sustainable social innovations that serve to empower vulnerable populations and communities across Australia and the Global South. She has led and contributed to a number of social behavior change research projects, including North Queensland's Primary Health Network, Queensland's Health, Diabetes Queensland, and UNICEF. Malawi, I'm sorry. Grace and Grit Social Enterprise, the social behavior change and community development enterprise, was established by Dr. Badejo. She also holds an adjunct research fellowship and sessional lectureship at Griffith University and QUT. Today, she will be letting us in on her current research, part of Grace and Grit Social Enterprise, that is focused on breaking the global human trafficking supply chain and designing services for victims of human trafficking. Abi?
Catherine. All right, so I would like to share with you today my presentation. just to share with you my journey on how I'm combating human trafficking through global partnerships and victim-centered, co-designed social innovations. So I'll just share my screen with you and hope that you can all see it. All right. All right, so thank you very much. So when I started Grace and Grit Social Enterprise, it was really, for me, an attempt to translate findings from my PhD, social marketing PhD, which sought to understand human trafficking from an alternative perspective, a marketing perspective. And it was a formative research that used a multi-stream approach. So I understood that human trafficking was understood from a variety of perspectives, and you have the legal perspective, and you have the criminal perspective, you have the economic perspective, but there wasn't a lot of perspectives on human trafficking as a marketing problem driven by sociocultural determinants. And I wanted to understand that perspective and see how marketing could also offer a solution. So my research yielded a number of insights, given its multi-stream approach. So I took a upstream approach in the sense that I wanted to understand how the problem of human trafficking, the discourse was being represented across government-sponsored advertisements, and also I wanted to understand how the problem was being represented. So how were people understanding human trafficking based on how the government and NGOs were positioning the problem, and as a result, how is this perception? How is that also reproducing the problem in a way that then continues to drive it? I also, at the midstream level, I wanted to understand the sociocultural drivers of human trafficking. So how were these factors reflected in the everyday lives of Nigerians across human trafficking endemic states? And so I took an ethnography approach to this. So I lived in Nigeria, which I hadn't done for many years. I am originally from Nigeria, by the way, so I do have that ethnic perspective, but I've also lived outside of Nigeria for a very long time. And so for me, it was kind of like a return to form, I suppose, return home. But I almost felt like a fish out of water because I'd lived in the West for so long. And so coming back to Nigeria, I felt like I was re-experiencing Nigeria through the eyes of those who didn't, who I guess the have-nots, so those who didn't have, because I wouldn't consider myself now on the same socioeconomic status as those who I lived with when I went back home to do my research. So it was re-experiencing what it's like to be disadvantaged and marginalized. And so that gave me a rich, a level of, a depth of insight that I wouldn't have had otherwise through, say, other means of collecting data, such as survey or even just interviews. So living and experiencing was critical to me understanding the issue, particularly in communities and states where human trafficking is quite prevalent. And of course, at the downstream level, I also, I visited a human trafficking shelter. I talked to young women who had been trafficked, and I sought to understand their lived experience. So what was the lived experience of victims who had been trafficked? And I walked away after that day with an appreciation for not only the experience of human trafficking that these women had to undergo, but also their return and how that was even more painful for some of them than the trafficking experience. And I'll never forget the image of this young woman who knelt in front of me and she begged me, tears streaming down her face, and she said, "You have to get me out of here because I don't want to be here. I have a child, she's 4 years old, nobody else can take care of her, and me being trafficked was the only way I could find a means of supporting her. So me being in this shelter, it's not helping me. It's not helping my daughter. Please help me get out of here. So I thought about all of the insights that I was generating and how I could use my findings to actually empower women like her, so that they would not have to endure not only the human trafficking experience, the exploitation and the oppression that comes with it, but also the re-victimization of being in a rescue shelter where you feel like you have no voice. So with all of my insights, I also used, my research design was guided by critical theory. So the way that I used critical theory, which holds that ideology is that principal obstacle to human liberation, and that social problems result from people being constrained by social structures and processes that they themselves construct and maintain, but they might not actually be aware of. So I use the Marxist perspective, cultural hegemony, false consciousness, and commodity fetishism. But I won't go into that. I'm working on papers, and I also currently have a paper in the Journal of Social Marketing where you can read more about the formative research side of things. So I'm going to go straight into what I did with my insights. So the problem, as we all know, human trafficking is a global problem. Over 40.3 million people are trafficked worldwide. And what's shocking is that 71% of those who are trafficked are female, and 1 in 4 of them are children. So my focus for Grace and Grit Social Enterprise is really women, young women and children. So my programs have a focus on working with schools, trying to reduce child labor, and also working with victims and the rescue industry. People have different misconceptions or understanding of what human trafficking is or what modern slavery is, and these terminologies are interrelated, but they all mean different things. But at the core is exploitation and oppression, where people are not being given a voice and they have their human rights violated, and they are not able to fulfill their potential. They are subject to abuse, especially young women and children, rape, sexual exploitation, etc. And also not just physical slavery, but there is also slavery of the mind, where people are forced to think a certain way because that is the only way that they are able to make a better life for themselves, because being in their home country, the conditions are so, it's so hard for them to make a living that they have convinced themselves that the only way to make a living is to travel abroad or to leave their community to migrate to an urban area or overseas. So there are forces at play here, and human trafficking is, it's quite a complex issue. So you have forced labor, you have slavery and slavery-like practices, including forced marriage, which in Australia is actually an issue. You also have cross-border trafficking within the country and also internationally. Now, the reason that we're looking at it as a marketing problem is that it is actually a global market in human beings. There's 150 billion people, $150 billion according to the ELO that the human trafficking industry nets per year, estimated to be the 3rd most illicit trade in the world after drugs and arms. And my country of origin, Nigeria, Nigerians are some of the most trafficked people across the European Union, and nearly 1 million Nigerians have been trafficked, according to Walk Free Foundation in 2016. In terms of consumption of human trafficking and products made by those who've been trafficked, you can see that the electronics industry leads the way, and then the fashion industry, and then fishery, agriculture. And so these 3 key industries really are the ones that need to be held the most accountable for perpetuating global slavery worldwide. So as I've explained, my multi-stream social marketing approach, so it was theory-driven, focused on participants, customer orientation, and yielded insight based on a multi-stream approach. And so, of course, as I said, it wasn't just oppression or systemic oppression, but it was also oppression of the mind of sorts, so ideology. And that is a huge part of our social innovation at Grace and Grit Social Enterprise. It's about deconstructing those stereotypes and deconstructing the ideologies that encourage people and that drive people to continue to make choices that may not be good for them, but they believe that they have no other options. So we wanted to focus on very much a victim-centered approach, because something that we found in our work with those who have been trafficked was that their voices were silenced, and it was very much an expert-driven approach where they weren't being given a say in how they would like to be rehabilitated or empowered. So there's almost this, you don't know what, you don't know anything, so here's a program, here's some finance, go and start something, here's basic skills training, now go. Whereas we're taking them on a journey and we're working with them step by step, co-designing and co-creating in real time programs that will assist them to actually live up to their full potential. And we continue to support them even beyond their vocational skills training. So we keep in touch as well. A lot of people have asked me why I called the enterprise Grace and Grit. And the reason emerged from my ethnography experience. In Nigeria, again, talking about ideology and how that is such an important part of our program, and how deconstructing that is also key to eradicating and combating human trafficking. And that is the word grace. Nigeria is a religious country, and it's split between Muslim and Christian, and also there are some traditional religion worshippers as well, but the two main ones are Christianity and Islam. And when you speak to Nigerians, or even most African people, if you want for anything to be done, you invoke the grace of God. So the grace of God is, it's that divine favor, that divine intervention that is undeserved. And grace to me was a word that I wanted to reflect that. If social marketing is about an intervention, we're trying to intervene to change behavior. And people in Nigeria believe in God's divine intervention in their lives. So tapping into those belief systems for me was a way to also change behavior. And grace was a word that immediately came to mind. To do anything, people say, by God's grace, it shall be done, or inshallah, it shall be done. And so grace enabled me to, again, continue to build on those belief systems in a positive way, as opposed to in a way that is damaging. And then grit, of course, is something that personally reflects my core values, and also something I see in a lot of Nigerians who don't have a lot, but they persevere. So it's that courage, that backbone, that strength of character, that toughness, that resilience, that perseverance. And for me, it was a nice way of combining divine intervention, so that help, that favor, with, the grit of man. So, grace of God, grit of man, together, you're unstoppable. And I wanted to instill those two concepts into the enterprise. So itself, the brand, could also be a change agent. So in terms of our impact and our operations, we operate currently in Nigeria, Cameroon, and Australia. And in Nigeria, I've worked with 4 human trafficking victims, initially through a shelter called the Yellow Shelter. And we've since gone our separate ways due to differences in values and I guess operation. And I wanted, accountability is very important to me, and so is transparency, and I did not find that to be the case. So I wanted to be true to myself and true to my values and true to the victims that we were trying to assist. And after hearing their stories of oppression and re-victimization by the rescue industry, it was not something that I could continue to support and partner with. So I instead work with these girls individually through virtually and individually through WhatsApp. We have a network that we've set up where we communicate and we co-create programs, and we co-create everyday activities together that provide employment for them, but also build on their skills and enable them to develop. So 4 of them I've worked with to undergo vocational skills training, and also I provide daily mentorship for them, business mentorship, applied entrepreneurship skills training. I send them articles and links to information that will help them to develop their micro business. So I talk to them. These girls are girls that I consider they're almost like family to me, because I've gotten to know them so well, and I understand their dreams and their aspirations, and they trust me. And trust is something that is so hard to build, especially for victims who have been exploited, not just by traffickers, but also by the rescue industry. So it was difficult earning their trust, but being consistent in my approach and being genuine and sincere in my desire to actually assist them and help them to achieve their dreams, we've been able to foster a trusting relationship. So 4 of them have been trained in vocational skills training. So 1 learned hairdressing, the other 2 learned fashion design. Now, fashion design is actually one of the more profitable vocational skills that you can have in Nigeria, because clothes are bespoke and tailor-made. So it's easy to gain skills in fashion design and set up a small tailoring fashion design shop and start earning money. So since getting their vocational skills training in fashion design, we're now in the process of setting up a green fashion factory. We've already piloted it, but we now need to actually scale it up in a way that enables not just the 2 girls who've learned fashion design, but also other victims who are interested in learning fashion design can be trained by the original 2. So we're trying to set up a self-sustaining ecosystem through this green fashion factory. We're working with sustainable fashion designers who can train these girls on sustainable practices in fashion design as well. And the 4th girl has actually one of the happy endings. She got married, and that is something that is quite hard for victims to imagine, that they could have a life post their trafficking experience, because of the stigma that comes along with being trafficked and ostracization and isolation in their community. And in fact, she sent me an invitation to her wedding, and she was very pleased and happy that I was able to help her through this process. We've also worked with schools in Nigeria. So I've got a partnership with a primary school where we sponsor children who are at risk of child labor, so single parent families, children who go to schools in low socioeconomic status areas where they are in need, and their family need them to actually support and be a contributor to the household. And so this affects their ability to concentrate in school, ability to perform, and it really interrupts their childhood and their development. So we support these families with scholarships under our Child Labor of Leadership Development Program. So it negates their need for child labor, and we also work with the schools to track their performance and also work with them to understand the background of every child so that we know which children are vulnerable to child labor, and we intervene and support the family to reduce their risks, either through microfinancing a family business, or supporting them with information and education. So the school that we currently work with is Springland Nursery and Primary School. The Green Fashion Factory, as I said, that's in the pilot stage. That's the one that I've trained the girls in writing a business plan. So they've actually produced a full business plan for the Green Fashion Factory, and I'd be happy to share that with anyone who's interested. So they are cultivating their skills in entrepreneurship, in business development, but also they've gained skills in actually doing the work in fashion design, and they're now just ready to hit the ground running. And all we're looking for is funding to get it going. Orphanages are another avenue for children to be exploited. And in fact, on my visit to Nigeria just this year, I went to an orphanage and I could see how easily children could be exploited and they could be trafficked without proper monitoring. So by partnering with an orphanage, I'm able to ensure that not only do I have a space to take children that we rescue from the streets who are at risk of child labor or child trafficking, who don't have a family, but we also are able to monitor and educate these children about their rights so that they are less susceptible to exploitation. We're also working to build the capacity of the Coalition of Agents Against Human Trafficking. So we're working with the government, the federal government, which is the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons. And also we worked with the 300 Project, which was an NGO in Nigeria, to build their capacity. So when I talk about building the capacity, I provide them with research-driven insights into programs that could potentially work. And then because they are the ones on the ground, they provide me with the context and tell me whether or not these programs work. And so together we co-create and we co-design the program so that it's more contextual and it's more relevant. We've also carried out a mass awareness social media campaign, which is the hashtag Break the Supply Chain with Grace and Grit. I have videos and photos of people wearing a t-shirt and pledging to break the supply chain. We also have a human trafficking victim assist and prevention hotline, which the girls, two of the girls, they actually are employed to man the hotline. So the hotline helps to provide information to potential victims and also to prevent those who are at risk. If they have information about a travel offer, they can call our hotline and get some advice from people who have been trafficked, and they are assured that they are getting first-hand information from people who have experienced it. We're also working with families, as I said, to build the capacity. So we understand their family background, we assess their risk of child labor, and we educate them on family planning, domestic violence, the risk of child labor, and we work with them to provide them with microfinance so that they are less dependent on the labor of their children to support the family. We also work with communities, so our work is also looking not just at the individual level but communities. So we look at vulnerable communities in Nigeria who have a high youth population, who are at risk of human trafficking or sex trafficking, and we work with them to understand their needs, and we advocate for them through their relevant government departments, and we work with them to actually build on resources that the community needs so that the needs of the youth are met and there's less of a risk for them to find human trafficking attractive. So it's about providing them with options, and we're still in the works with that one. So we have a list of issues that the community is facing, and employment, of course, youth unemployment is one of the biggest issues, and it's about creating opportunities for employment for the youth so that they're less likely to they're less likely to be at risk of trafficking. And I'd just like to play a little video of the children from Springland Primary School. We are from Springland, we really stand up for Abi Foluké Badejo, supporting our kids. Thank you. So these children, they are 4 of the children from Springland Primary School that we sponsor. And when I went to Nigeria in May, I presented a child labor education program on child labor and how to protect themselves. I gave them phone numbers to call in case they ever find themselves in a situation where they're being exploited. So it was about giving them real skills and strategies to protect themselves, but also supporting their families to reduce their risk of child labor. And then working with the schools to monitor their progress. So if they're not doing so well, then we want to understand why, and we have to reconsider the scholarship arrangement. Now in Cameroon, we have trained 9 young women who were victims of human trafficking and also at risk of human trafficking. So internally displaced women tend to be at risk because Cameroon is a politically unstable country, and so there are women and children who are particularly at risk because they're homeless and they have no options. So we train them in vocational skills training, so snack making, and we provide them with resources to set up a small business in the market, the local markets, so that they are able to support their family. So when we checked on these women 3 months later, they were still going strong. So we're quite pleased to see that, and we'll be carrying out another evaluation of the program in the next couple of months. We work with the Survivors Network in Cameroon, which is actually led by Awa Francisca, who herself is a victim, former victim of human trafficking. And she's just an inspiration to me in terms of being able to transform her prospects and actually take her story of exploitation and oppression and transform that into something positive that helps other people. So, being somebody on the ground who is a doer, it's been quite instrumental for me in terms of my ability to translate my ideas into actual programs that work on the ground in Cameroon. So having somebody who has the same vision really, really helps in this case. We also carried out the same campaign that we did in Nigeria, the mass awareness campaign in at-risk communities, pledged to break the supply chain with grace and grit. But it's not just about creating awareness. Social marketing is about giving people the alternative, the exchange. What are you giving people in return for giving up the undesirable behavior? So for us, it's about being able to provide them with opportunities and resources and phone number, a call to action, a way for them to access help and resources and opportunities so that they are less susceptible to human trafficking. Most importantly as well, we have piloted a healthy fast food kitchen. So Awa, who, as I said, is the CEO of Survivors Network in Cameroon. Together, we've been able to pilot a little healthy fast food kitchen using organic fruit and vegetables that she's been able to grow with some of the former victims of human trafficking. So using fresh homegrown vegetables to cook, and then we're now looking at expanding this service to actually deliver food to business districts. So it's a way for us to provide employment to victims and internally displaced people as well. And in Australia, we are working to pilot a optimized human trafficking education and resilience building course for victims and at-risk women and children. So we're targeting origin countries with this content, which we can use for our school outreach programs. But also we're going to have a tailored content for concerned citizens in destination countries such as Australia, who can then, they're able to identify signs of human trafficking and see what they can do to, we provide them with information about how they can also become active in combating human trafficking. So I'm developing this course in partnership with an Australian education startup called Economy. So we're in the pilot stage at the moment, and I'll show you through some slides on that. I'm also working on a critical thinking based, co-designed, trauma-informed, victim-centered recovery and resilience building course and resources. This is for victims specifically. Now, because of the trauma that these victims endure during their trafficking experience, but also on return to the country, there was a gap in the level of care, psychological care that they receive. And this is coming from the victims themselves. And it occurred to me that perhaps I could take what I've learned from here and use that to co-design a program that would not only assist them to recover from the trauma, but also provide them with even more resilience to be able to adjust to life back in their source country, so either Nigeria or Cameroon, etc. So I'm working with a Gestalt therapist, and she's actually booked her flights and will be going to visit the girls in December. So we've just issued her with an invitation letter, and she'll be spending 2 weeks with the girls and learning about their experience and co-creating this program with them. And then the goal is to then take this program and we are going to offer it to NGOs and also government organizations that are responsible for rehabilitating and rescuing victims of human trafficking. And this is just a little clip of the 9 women.
I pledge to break the supply chain with grace and grace.
So those were the 9 women who trained in Cameroon to start a business in snack making. And this is the course that we're developing with Economy. So the pilot module is under development at the moment. So as you can see, we've got the module by lesson, and we're going to expand on this further, but this is just culled from different sources of knowledge at the moment, and we're going to be building on it further to ensure that it's actually relevant both visually and content-wise to each target segment. This is the mobile optimized version, and of course some of the characters do not reflect the look and feel of the target segments, particularly in places like Nigeria. So we are going to be raising funds to ensure that we actually provide relevant characters as well. So in terms of partnerships, we're partnering with Economy, the education platform, Relating Matters, which is the Gestalt therapist and trauma and resilience psychoeducation designer. We're working with Shaka Vosokova, who is a sustainable fashion designer and entrepreneur in Australia. She also has a fashion startup in Madagascar, which has the same ideas as what we're trying to do with the Green Fashion Factory. So we're pooling our resources to work towards something that empowers the girls in Nigeria. I've also worked or been in talks with the Fashion Revolution Social Fashion Factory in Greece, and we are again learning we're learning from how they've set up their social fashion factory to then develop our green fashion factory. So we are taking what's worked from previous prevention efforts and restoration efforts, and using that, synthesizing all of that with our knowledge to then develop and launch the Green Fashion Factory. Now, we also work with NAPTIP and NGO in Nigeria, Idia Renaissance, Survivors Network, Orphanage, Primary School, our Community Council of Elders, and also Mirror of Hope in Kenya, although we have not done any work in Kenya as yet. So what have we learned about operating a social enterprise in Nigeria, Cameroon, while based in Australia? Trust is important, and it's important to understand that the rescue industry isn't always geared to service the needs of those who have been victimized. Again, because they tend to take that expert-driven approach, and also they're underfunded. So it's not necessarily an indictment of the rescue industry, but it's more so that they lack resources and capacity to actually put victims first. And so victims end up becoming re-victimized again and exploited. So they also are not as strictly regulated or held accountable. So there's a lot that they tend to get away with, which again seriously disadvantages those who are being rescued. So my focus is with Grace and Grit is, redefining the narrative about victims and actually empowering them to have a say in their own restoration and in their own empowerment and development, so that they do not fall back into that cycle of human trafficking. So it's important for us to put victims first. And for me, it was also learning to adjust my expectations, especially around timelines for delivering programs. So as I said, the way that I support and build capacity of NGOs in Nigeria and Cameroon has been through my research and my ideas. Now, I have good ideas that come from synthesizing of my research insights, reading widely, understanding what has worked and what hasn't worked, and having my finger on the pulse. So I come up with good ideas all the time, but because I'm here and I'm not on the ground all the time, I can't always ensure that it's contextually relevant. So working together to ensure that my ideas and the concepts actually align with the context, and we co-create solutions. I want to see results instantly, and I understand that it doesn't always work that way. There are problems with infrastructure, there are problems with power, there are problems with funding that limit our ability to deliver on time. So those who have supported Grace and Grit in the past and have asked, so what's happening? What's happening? It is happening. It's just happening at sometimes a snail pace. And but I'm also quite proud to understand that we are doing the best we can with the limitations that we have, and we have still been able to make such an impact on the lives of vulnerable women and children. So being able to manage expectations as well, what I found from working with an NGO in Nigeria is that it just became a matter of me it became a matter of me becoming the funder when we were supposed to be partners. So there was this learned, I suppose, helplessness that came with the organization once they realized that, I am based here. So there was this expectation that, well, you're in the West, you have access to all the funds. So we just take and we do, and we don't have to be held all that accountable. And I said, no, it doesn't work that way. It's a partnership. So we need to help each other. So you need to show me results. You need to deliver on my ideas in the program and ensure that it's victim-centered. And I need to see proof and evidence before more funding can be raised for you. So these are things that need to be managed, and it's a give and take relationship. And also just being embedded in the culture, understanding the role of social norms, the media, influencers, and the importance of social proof to change behavior. You know, in a culture like Nigeria, African culture, you know, status is important, the way that you're perceived is important. So social norms have a huge role to play in how people behave, and also how they can change their behavior. So very important to understand how social norms come into play here, particularly the media, music, you know, blogs, social media. These are important vehicles for actually disseminating information and message to ensure that people are exposed and can change their behavior. So using influencers, again, music is a huge part of Nigerian culture, and I'm still working very hard to find a musician who can partner with our organization to spread the message and have that influence on vulnerable people. Navigating that power struggle in partnerships, that's something that I have struggled with as well. And again, it's about finding that organization or that person who has the same vision and commitment to combating human trafficking, and is actually not doing it for the glory or, you know, to have their brand represented. It's about, you know, combining and pooling our resources to expand our reach and achieve impact. So I just wanted to play you a little.
Hello, my name is Leanne. I'm 22 years of age. I'm in Nigeria, from Delta State, and I reside in Lagos. I'm here to talk about my experience. On the 18th of April 2017, I returned back to Nigeria from my never-ending journey to Europe. I was brought back by an organization, an NGO organization. On reaching Nigeria, I was promised a good education and a shelter of my own. As time went by, things began to fall apart. I started having issues with the people in the shelter because I'm a kind of person that I really like to speak my mind. At the end of the day, regret came in, emotional distress. I felt like committing suicide or running away for the second time. At the end of the day, I had no choice, but I didn't want to spend more time in the shelter. I asked them if I can go into business. So they rented the shop for me, got an accommodation for me, and few things were provided in the shop. As time goes on, because of the Nigerian economy, I went back to them and I told them. At first, I wanted the shop as a salon, but it didn't come out like that. It ended up being a cosmetic shop. All the materials wasn't provided for me. It became difficult for me. So I had to put someone in the shop, go out to work, and then pay my employee. It was difficult. My business wasn't able to provide the amount of money for me to pay the person who works for me. It was terrible on me. Got to a stage I wasn't able to feed. So I had to go back to these same people, crying to them like, I need to turn the shop into a salon, because if it was a salon, at least someone who has come to make their hair would pick one of my products I have in the shop, and from there sales would begin. But at the end of the day, they said they had no more money to support me.
Sorry, little technical glitch there. Just trying to get my screen back. Okay, I'm just going to move on from there because I'm running out of time. But so this is another story of experiences of victims where, you know, they come back from their experience and then they are not supported beyond the initial, here is some funds, go and start a business, but they actually they lack the skills, the tools, the resources to actually succeed in their enterprise. So part of what we're trying to do with Grace and Grit is to not only provide them with startup support, but ongoing mentorship, so that they are able to understand all of the ways that they can manage their business, not just from the startup state, but also how they can promote it, how they can market it, how they can generate sales. So we teach them entrepreneurship skills, and that's very important to sustainability and longevity in the game, which some of these girls did not have. And again, another story from one of our victims who was rescued just recently, but then she was exploited by the very organization that rescued her. So until I stepped in and I took over. So these are stories that are unfortunately quite common. So for us, the road ahead is about scaling up and branching out. We have demonstrated success in our pilot programs, and we have so much more to do and so much more to partner, so many more partners to work with in terms of not just in Cameroon and Nigeria, but also in Australia. We are developing our focus on Australia as well, not just for trafficking, but also looking at vulnerable populations as well, because at the end of the day, it's about our goal is emancipation. Our goal is freedom for everyone, and exploitation. People cannot be free if they're being exploited. People cannot be emancipated if they're being oppressed. And from experience living in Australia, there are young women, so teenagers, girls who are experiencing a lot of problems in school and are unable to find the support that they need for fear of approaching organizations where they can be identified. So we're looking at coming up with different ways to support young teenage girls, who need help, but do not feel comfortable accessing the help. We're also looking at branching out into corporate training, including supply chain audits in preparation for the Modern Slavery Act, which is will be a requirement for organizations, especially large corporations. And we're looking to, once we've developed our education module with economy, we're looking to pilot that in schools and also provide that pilot, provide that anonymous mentorship hotline for teenage girls to support them through their problems. So the Green Fashion Factory, as I mentioned, this has been developed. The business plan has been developed by the victims themselves. So I provided them with template and training, and they've been able to develop the plan themselves and provided the budget. Same with the Healthy Fast Food Truck in Cameroon. And this was developed by AWA, the Survivors Network, NGO in Cameroon that I work and support. So we've done the kitchen. Now we're working to expand and also train victims who can actually deliver the food. We have a number of trading activities, so if you want to support us, you can sign up for corporate training, or you could leverage our expertise in the field, not just in human trafficking, but in social behavior change. So we do research and program development for NGOs. We also specialize in social enterprise marketing and promotion. We're able to provide culture vulture tours, as we call it, so global tours to Africa via our adventure travel partner. And also we retail victim produced and also merchandise for campaigns that we've run in the past. And soon you'll be able to sign up for human trafficking education if you're a school. So we look forward to working with anyone who's interested in supporting our activities and helping us to scale. So our call to arms against modern slavery is please log onto our website, check out more of what we do. You can donate to support us, or you can work with us by doing business with us. You can join us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. Now, one of my biggest limitations is that I don't have the funding to hire a full-time staff over here in Australia who can also assist with keeping all of our socials up to date. Instead, we work with our victims, who I train them in social media to be able to upload and keep us relevant on social media. But again, due to the time difference and skills and level of availability, we don't always have our content up to date. But with more funding and support, we'll be able to train more people to be able to update our sites. Some photos from our work, and of course for those who don't know, break the chain. That was my little boy supporting me, 4-year-old Zion, to break the chain. And again, these are the three girls behind the yellow wall. They are the girls who were at the shelter previously, who now work with me directly and are employed by my organization. This is the orphanage that I visited, that I'm now partnering with, the school, Springland, where I talk to all these kids about their dreams and aspirations, and protecting them from human trafficking and child labor. And of course, some of the work that we've done in Cameroon. And that is my presentation. Any questions for me?
Abby, that was wonderful. Thank you so much for a vast opening my mind, and I'm sure the hearts and minds of several other people. I do have a couple of questions. You did share a bit about how additional funding can be obtained for this important work, but how are you currently funded?
So all of the work I've been able to do so far, it was from the crowdfunding campaign I ran last year. So it was a Kickstarter campaign where I was able to raise I think I raised $7,500, and I've been able to make it go far. But yeah, the rest has been self-funded. Okay,
and then so the question came up that how can we get Western societies to contribute more towards the fight against human trafficking, especially in origin countries such as Nigeria?
Yes, exactly. So, working with social enterprises such as myself, so not necessarily, donating money, but actually, even if you have skills in particular area where you'd like to come in and provide training to victims, we're happy for you to do that. So the Gestalt therapist I mentioned from Relating Matters, who's now going to Nigeria to talk to the girls and build this resilience program with them, that was through my talking to her about the work I do and her saying, how can she help? And I said, well, you're a therapist. These girls have gone through so much trauma. How can we use your skills to develop something that will actually ensure that they are better able to adjust and cope with their new reality? And now she's going over there to work with them to, help to develop their resilience. So there are lots of different ways that you can assist people can assist if they want to. Funding our programs is one, but also, leveraging your expert knowledge and skills is another. Spreading the word about trafficking is another. Participating in campaigns to raise awareness, purchasing merchandise that also help us to raise funds to do more. Just spreading the word, doing what you can, being able, learning about human trafficking so you can actually identify the signs of trafficking, know when something is not right, know when people are being exploited and what you can do about it, how to report potential trafficking situations. So there's so much information out there, so it begins with education. So if people would like to help, please, the first step is learning about human trafficking, and then finding organizations that you like the sounds of what they're doing. You can see that they are making an impact and supporting them to do so.
Yeah, definitely. Abby, thank you so much, and I'm going to send this back to Christine.
Thank you.
To wrap us up.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you, Abby. This was a fantastic webinar. We really appreciate your time today. And for those of you who are not members of the International Social Marketing Association, this is just one example of the kind of content that we can share from our social marketing peers around the world. You'll be getting a follow-up email with details on how to join us. And then there are also information on upcoming events on the International Social Marketing Association website, so we encourage you to check those out. Thanks so much to the full webinar production team today. Thanks, Dave Cutter, for handling the technical aspects of today's webinar behind the scenes, and for everyone else to helping put together this wonderful content. Over to you, Patrick.
Great, thanks, Christine. And just let me echo Christine's thanks to Abby and the entire team that pulled together the webinar. But I also want to thank all of you who joined us today, this morning, this evening, this afternoon. We hope you enjoyed the webinar and hope you will join us for future webinars. I also want to just encourage you to keep visiting the website, check the events on the calendar, and watch your inboxes for our newsletter about new tools and resources that are coming your way. So this is the International Social Marketing Association. We now conclude today's webinar.